Hey, what's up, folks? How you doing? So, welcome to the final episode of the Jehovah's Witness Debunked series. And what I've opted to do is simply just merge everything together for all the remaining episodes, since initially this was supposed to be a 5-part video series, but it looks like it's going to be a 3-part video series. And I've noticed through my research and reading of Jehovah's Witness publications, their take on science is pretty consistent and almost uniform. So I can't go around critiquing every point and critiquing every article they have about design and all that stuff. So I think the magazine I'm currently looking at today, or the brochure instead, called The Origin of Life, kind of sums up pretty much where Jehovah's Witnesses stand when it comes to scientific approach. And this magazine is basically split in 5 chapters. For those chapters that I feel I've touched already in the previous videos, or critiques about evolution, the Big Bang, and all that stuff, I will not dwell so much into it. I will just really gloss through them, which is practically what I aim to do. So my approach really was, in my scripting, what I could basically do is put out their claim, and then followed by a rebuttal or a refutation and a little commentary on that. So that's the way my script is done. And I'm going question by question, since the magazine is split between questions. So there's question 1 to 5. Yeah. So let's quickly get into it and call it a wrap. So the first question that the magazine brings out is, how did life begin? And just to add some meat to this, or to add some caveat to it, please don't be misled. This is a very hard question, and no scientist is in the business of claiming that we have a sucker punch answer for this question. So it's pretty understandable that Jehovah's Witnesses will be even approaching this with so much confidence and trying to make it seem as though scientists are just basically evading a very important question because they do not have a good answer. But anyway, I would like to start with the Miller-Urey experiment and how I feel it's basically misrepresented. So the claim that the article brings out is that the Miller-Urey experiment only produced some amino acids, and this does not prove life can arise spontaneously. That's the conclusion that they draw. But then if you look at the actual practicality of the experiment, the Miller-Urey experiment was not meant to create life, but to demonstrate that organic molecules such as amino acids could form under prebiotic conditions. Since this experiment in 1953, further research has expanded its findings, has expanded and built on the findings that this experiment brought out. And scientists have shown that numerous organic molecules, including lipids and sugars and nitrogenous bases, can form under similar conditions. For instance, so in 2009, researchers at the University of Manchester synthesized activated nucleotides under plausible prebiotic conditions. You can look that up. And scientists have discovered catalytic processes involving minerals and clay surfaces that can assist in polymerizing simple molecules into more complex ones. All this stuff, you can look it up. So there's some meat to this. It's not just a sheer failure that everybody can trash talk. Then the second misunderstanding I would like to tackle is the misunderstanding of probability and self-organization. So the claim that the article brings out is basically that the probability of RNA or proteins forming by chance is vanishingly small or astronomically very low. And my rebuttal to that is this claim misunderstands the nature of probability in a natural system. Self-organization and iterative processes governed by physical and chemical laws make the emergence of life more plausible than suggested in the magazine. So let's look at a little bit of that. So molecules do not form entirely at random. That's just not the case. Chemical reactions are guided by thermodynamics and the stability of intermediate products. So RNA and peptides could have formed in localized environments, e.g., hydrothermal vents or tidal pools, where conditions favor specific reactions and not just randomly popping out of nowhere. Then there's the emergency of complexity. Studies in systems chemistry show that complex networks of reactions can self-organize into higher order structures under certain conditions. Complexity does not imply improbability, but is an emergent property of systems operating far from equilibrium. And then the other big misrepresentation is this mischaracterization of scientific consensus. And I've noticed Jehovah's Witnesses like to do this. They like to misrepresent what the scientific consensus is and like to pitch mainstream science and mainstream well accepted scientific facts against each other, like in order to arrive to their claim. So, one such claim in the article is that all scientific research indicates that life cannot spring from non living matter. But then this statement is demonstrably false. Abiogenesis, the natural process by which life arises from non-living matter, is a well-researched field with multiple working hypotheses. Some notable progress has been made to a very, considerable degree, and I could list out some things that you could read upon in your own free time, which is the hydrothermal vent hypothesis, limposome formation, and RNA and the RNA hypothesis. This is stuff that you can read on your own and just check it out. This is not as untainable as the magazine is trying to make it seem to be. So, yeah, you should look it up in your own time. This is really solid stuff. And then the magazine also has this thing of selective quoting and misrepresentation of actual experts. So I'll give you an example. The claim is that the article cites Robert Shapiro and Carol Cleland as authorities who emphasize the improbability of life arising naturally. This is a blatant misuse of expert opinions. So look, let's just focus on Robert Shapiro for a minute here. So while Robert Shapiro criticized the RNA world hypothesis in its earlier formations, he argued for alternative prebiotic chemistry pathways, not against the possibility of abiogenesis. You know what I mean? He proposed that life likely emerged from simpler, more robust chemical systems rather than from highly improbable single events. Not that he was in a wholesale argument against the possibility of life arising from non-living matter. And then Carol Cleland advocates for exploring alternative paradigms of life's origin rather than dismissing abiogenesis as an enterprise altogether. Her criticism is directed at the limitations of current models, not at the concept of natural origins itself, as the way the witnesses are trying to make it seem like, oh, here are two experts who just don't believe in this enterprise. No. Get into the whole details and the approach that these people take, you know? So misrepresenting nuanced scientific debates as outright skepticism is a common rhetorical tactic, but lacks intellectual honesty. And this is where I feel Jehovah's Witnesses play, the Watchtower Society just like really does an underhanded game in its approach to science. And then, as always, I've touched this in the other videos. This is basically an argument from design. So in this particular one, they use this false analogy with robot creation, you know. So the claim is that if it takes intelligence to create a robot, then life, being more complex, must also require intelligent design. Equally, the same way that designing a robot was obviously done by a smart person, you know. But then this analogy fails because it misunderstands natural processes. Robots are artificially constructed by humans, while living organisms emerge through natural processes governed by physical and chemical laws. The two are fundamentally different. Life is self-organizing, adaptive, and shaped by natural selection, while robots require external design and input. Then there's this fallacy of irreducible complexity. So the argument assumes that all parts of life must appear simultaneously in functional form. However, evolutionary theory demonstrates that complexity arises incrementally from intermediate stages, each providing a selective advantage. For example, simple self-replicating molecules can evolve into more complex systems over time. And then there's practically no empirical evidence for design. Unlike natural processes, intelligent design lacks empirical evidence or testable hypotheses. Asserting design simply because current scientific explanations are incompetent is an appeal to ignorance, you know? which and science and the history of science itself has taught us that this is a very bad route to take. And then I feel like the magazine also is embroiled into this philosophical misconception of science. And one way that this is plainly made manifest is there's a claim in the magazine that's openly brought out that science has failed to provide a satisfying story about life's origins, implying that supernatural explanations are more credible. But science does not operate on satisfying stories, but on evidence-based explanations. The current gaps in our understanding of abiogenesis do not validate supernatural explanations for the following reasons. One, this is something that I think Richard Dawkins made a bit prominent, which is the God of the gaps argument. So invoking a designer simply because science has yet to fully explain a phenomena halts inquiry and offers no explanatory power. History shows that scientific progress often resolves mysteries previously attributed to divine intervention. And we have the germ theory of disease to give you an example, and even planetary motion. So be careful with this stuff. And then one thing I would like us to appreciate is that science builds knowledge incrementally, and its strength lies in its openness to revision. Gaps in our understanding are not weaknesses, but opportunities for further research and further learning, as well as more robust conversations. So basically, when it comes to the burden of proof, supernatural claims are unfalsifiable and provide no predictable or explanatory framework, making them scientifically irrelevant, if you ask me. So let's skip to the second question. Is any form of life really simple? So the claim here is no form of life is truly simple. Even the simplest cells are irreducibly complex. And the rebuttal I kind of scripted is basically, so the article misrepresents the concept of simplicity in biological systems by equating it with absolute simplicity, which is not what scientists are up and about. When scientists describe prokaryotic cells as simple, they do so in a relative sense compared to eukaryotic cells, not to imply that they lack complexity entirely. No, that's not the case. And here's why this argument is flawed, that they try to bring out here. So there's the issue of gradual evolution of complexity. So complexity observed in modern cells did not arise spontaneously, but evolved incrementally over billions of years. These early life forms gradually acquired more complexity through processes like mutation, natural selection, and horizontal gene transfer. The concept of irreducible complexity, often invoked to argue against natural evolution, has been debunked repeatedly. You can watch a bunch of YouTube videos and books, everybody. This is just not a credible argument to even bring to the table. The second claim is that the complexity of the cell, such as the membrane and protein folding processes, indicates intelligent design. This claim misunderstands the nature of biological complexity and how it arises. So biological systems exhibit emergent properties where complex behaviors arise from the interaction of simpler components. And then proteins fold into specific shapes due to the physical and chemical properties of their amino acid sequences. Evolutionary processes have fine-tuned these sequences over time to optimize function. The efficiency and precision of protein folding are outcomes of billions of years of selective pressures, not evidence of an intelligent design. The other claim is that rapid and accurate reproduction of cells is inconsistent with undirected processes. And by undirected, we know they're trying to get a bite at evolution here. So the remarkable speed and accuracy of cell reproduction in modern organisms are the result of billions of years of evolutionary refinement. Early life forms were likely much less efficient, with higher error rates in replication and slower reproduction. Over time, natural selection favored organisms with improved fidelity and speed, leading to the systems we observe today. The other claim is that evolution cannot explain the origin of life, and thus the entire theory collapses. This argument ignores the distinction between abiogenesis and evolution. Darwin was not in the business of explaining the origin of life or what first started life. altogether. That's not what Darwin was all about. We need to separate these two domains. Evolutionary theory explains the diversity of life after it originated, while abiogenesis addresses the question of life's origins. A lack of complete understanding of abiogenesis does not undermine the vast body of evidence supporting evolution. The two are just not even related in that sense. You know what I mean? While abiogenesis remains an open question, significant progress has been made in understanding potential pathways for the natural origin of life. The gaps in current knowledge are challenges for future research, not evidence for intelligent design. This is basically an example of the God of the gaps fallacy, which I talked about, which asserts divine intervention wherever scientific understanding is incomplete. And then the third question, where did the instructions come from? Obviously, here they're talking about DNA. So the claim is that DNA is an extraordinary feat of engineering. This is basically the order, if it's amazing, someone must have built it argument. In reality, DNA structure is the result of natural processes like evolution and self-organization, honed over billions of years. What seems engineered to us is simply the outcome of countless generations of trial and error, guided by natural selection. Mother Nature's lab doesn't need a blueprint. It has time and variability, Yeah. The other claim that they bring out is that DNA stores more information than any man-made device, so it must be designed. Sure, DNA is impressive, but just because it's beyond our current technological reach doesn't mean an invisible hand came along and said, let there be nucleotides. You know what I mean? Nature is full of examples where simple rules create complex outcomes. That's just the way nature operates. DNA evolved to be efficient because life forms that had better replication systems outcompeted others. It's not a miracle. It's simply the survival of the fittest, to put it rather smugly, And then there's this little argument that they bring out that if a book needs a writer, how can DNA exist without one? This argument is clever if we were still in the 18th century. DNA doesn't require a writer because it's not a conscious book. It's a chemical molecule subject to physical laws. Random mutations and natural selection over billions of years result in the text we see today. Comparing DNA to a book is just a convenient metaphor, but let's not mistake metaphors with reality. Yes, yeah. Question 4, has all life descended from a common ancestor? Well, yeah. It's not even a hard question. So here they pitch Darwin's tree of life versus the Bible's kinds. Darwin suggested that life evolved from a common ancestor, a poetic yet scientifically sound idea that has been supported by genetics and comparative anatomy and the fossil record. But no, here comes Genesis to save the day with its kinds, a term so vaguely defined that it could mean anything from cats to creatures that look a bit cattish and stuff like that. How convenient. Because when your argument can fit any outcome, it really isn't a good argument. Man, it just isn't. You know what I mean? And then on this point, they use the Cambrian explosion as some sort of the last blow. So the Cambrian explosion is repeatedly dragged out as if it's the Achilles heel of evolutionary biology. Oh, look! They cry. Lots of diverse life forms appear quickly in the fossil record. Evolution must be wrong. Except quickly here spans tens of millions of years. Hardly a blink of an eye. It's like claiming you blinked and missed the construction of the pyramids. Sudden diversification isn't evidence against evolution, it's evidence for ecological and genetic innovation under changing conditions. So there's all this stuff. You can look at the fossil record and all that stuff. But yeah. So in the last question, what they basically try to do after drawing all this bad stuff around, this hodgepodge of bad arguments, they quickly sum it up with, is it reasonable to believe in the Bible? Like it's the only sucker punch blow left. Well. The Bible, an ancient collection of texts that have somehow managed to survive millennia of historical upheaval, translations, and reinterpretations, is now being presented as the ultimate beacon of reason and scientific accuracy. And how convenient, you know? So here they start off with they lay the ground first for you, you know? Yeah, to make it easy for you to accept. Is the Bible misrepresented by these other people? Yeah, it's true. The Bible has been misrepresented, we are told. And they go yes, the Bible has been misrepresented. It's not the Bible that's full of outdated, contradictory, and scientifically impossible claims. It's simply that people have misunderstood it. They've just misunderstood it. Take, for example, it claims that the earth is the center of the universe in 1 Samuel 2, verse 8. Those things have been misrepresented and misinterpreted, right? It's definitely not that the Bible's descriptions were based on the limited knowledge of its ancient authors. It's the readers who got it wrong. It's the readers. Then the second claim is that the Bible doesn't contradict scientists' estimate on the age of the universe or the earth. Now we are talking. Now we are talking. The Bible, it seems, has magically evolved over time to be perfectly in sync with modern scientific knowledge. It's almost like the Bible was waiting for science to catch up before it could be considered non-contradictory, What a stroke of genius. And of course, that bit about the sun standing still during Joshua's battle. This is Joshua 10:13. Clearly, just a little misrepresentation. Just a little misrepresentation. Dude paused the sun in the sky. It's just a misrepresentation, my guy. And then the other claim is the Bible's account of creation leaves room for scientific inquiry. Sure. The Bible's account leaves plenty of room for scientific inquiry. If by scientific inquiry you mean complete lack of testable hypotheses. The creation story starts with, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, followed by a few days of creating light, land, and animals, in no particular order. How wonderfully vague, man. Galileo, Newton, and Darwin must have loved the idea of starting their scientific pursuits with absolutely no guiding evidence. Just a few unsubstantiated words about God pulling the strings. Truly, the Bible has been a shining beacon of clarity for science after science did all the work, Yeah. Is it reasonable to believe in the Bible? Well, it depends on your definition of reasonable. If by reasonable you mean accepting contradictions, outdated science, and moral ambiguity, while ignoring historical context and modern evidence, then sure, absolutely. But if you are looking for a coherent and scientifically sound and ethically consistent worldview, the Bible might not be the place to start. The reality is that the Bible is, at best, an ancient book of stories, teachings, and laws based on the limited understanding of its time. To repackage it as a work of reason, science, and morality is nothing short of a theological sleight of hand, one that would make even the most talented illusionist jealous, So if you want to find wisdom in the Bible, that's your prerogative. But don't be surprised when you run along into some serious contradictions along the way. So here's where we end the JW Debunked series. Yeah, these videos can be referred to anytime, any day, any place. Yeah, I won't be doing any Jehovah's Witness stuff anymore. We'll keep it science and philosophy. Just wanted to get this out of the way. Until next time, remember the goal is to propagate the love for science and philosophy. See you in 2025.